The following is lecture number 13 of the lecture series From Indian Buddhism to Chinese Chan by Guogu. This lecture is on Chan as the doctrinal amalgamation and culmination of Chinese Buddhism. It was recorded in 2022.
Okay, everyone's doing all right? Okay. Well, we finally got to Chan. We'll spend a couple of weeks, several weeks on Chan. Today we'll lay out the doctrinal foundation of Chan, even though the four axioms of the Chan school claims that it is a teaching outside of the scriptures, not dependent on words and language, direct pointing at the human heart, seeing self-nature become a Buddha. The four axioms, very famous. It's the Chan self-representation. As we can see, and what we will see, that Chan is can be said to be the amalgamation, culmination, if you will, from the doctrinal development of Buddhism. So we've come pretty far. And I trust that all of you have kept up the readings. They may be difficult. And in terms of quantity, maybe a lot. But at least we laid out a map. And I'll be referring to that tonight. And you can always return to it. So for tonight, I'd like to start by sharing the screen for the second to the last map of the doctrinal classification chart. This would be the path of recognition, part 3. It looks complicated, and I will most likely go beyond 9 p.m. So, just a heads up. If you need to log off at 9 p.m., those of you present need to leave, just say goodbye, just leave. And then return to the recording. Right? There's a lot to cover. And I do want to spend some time here on the chart. If you look at the top, okay, path of recognition. We've talked about the path of renunciation, talked about the path of transformation, and now we come to this third part, which is path of recognition. Recognizing what? Recognizing that freedom is accessible, liberation, emancipation is possible in this moment, here and now. And this is built on the Tiantai doctrine of 3 trichiliocosms in a single thought, or the manifested thought, manifested mind. This was in the earlier Tiantai chart. Okay. Except Chan bypasses all the complexity of the doctrinal nuances to present it in a very straightforward and concrete way from the working end of practice. Okay. Beneath that title, Path of Recognition, we have part 3, Chan School, right? Amalgamation. Amalgamating what? Amalgamating, we see the Agama, Abhidharma Kosha, Yogacara, Madhyamika, Tiantai, Huayan. In other words, everything that we've covered before. And Chan has selected from these traditions key ideas and developed them further. Okay? But very quickly, the Agamas represents the Agamas and Abhidharma represent the path of renunciation. Okay? Yogacara, Madhyamika, the path of transformation, especially Yogacara. Madhyamika came temporally right after the Agamas, and it elaborated on dependent origination. Therefore, all things are empty. All constructed things are empty. And also introduced a new idea. Right? The soteriological goal has shifted from renunciation with the goal of nirvana to Buddhahood. Right? And thereby laying out the Bodhisattva path. Right? That's from the Prajnaparamita literature, of which there are several Prajnaparamita sutras. Okay. And the Yogacara talks about the transformation from consciousness to wisdom. Okay. The first 5 consciousness, the 6th consciousness, the 7th consciousness, the 8th consciousness. Okay. And you have in your handout these 4 types of transformations. So I'm calling the whole Mahayana tradition the path of transformation. And then Tiantai and Huayan is there because they synthesized and developed further from a Chinese perspective the teachings of Madhyamika and Yogacara and Tathagata Garbha. Right? But the way it is synthesized is very organic and very straightforward, as you'll see. So, all these different traditions. Do you want to go get a drink, Fred? Okay. All these teachings are brought to consummation in the Chan tradition. Below that, in the chart, you see Chan school divided in 2 ways. Tonight we'll focus on teachings. Right? Next week we'll focus on a practice from the Chan tradition, and then the following week we'll talk about expedient means. Right? We'll elaborate on another chart. Tonight is the teachings. From the teachings, you see a division of doctrine and principle. Right? So, what is the doctrinal basis of Chan? Right? The doctrine refers to, here, textual basis of Chan. The principle refers to principle of practice. Right? The guiding principle for practice. And what is that principle? We'll see later. Precept, meditation, and wisdom. Right? Even though the threefold study rubric can be found in early Buddhism, but the content of those 3 higher learnings are quite unique, we'll see. Not limited to the early teachings. So the rubric is the principle. Going back to the doctrine. How did Chan integrate agamas, prajnaparamita? The doctrinal part is renunciation, the mind of renunciation, and the mind of altruism, bodhicitta. So, these two, from the Chan perspective, are inseparable. Right? So renunciation can be the foundation, if you will. On the basis of that, broadly expanding on that foundation to wish all beings to be free from suffering, thus generating the Bodhi mind, recognizing the interconnectedness of all beings. The deeper we go into practice, the deeper we realize our interconnections. And this desire to not forsake, not leave behind sentient beings, to bring them along, to foster their renunciation and their compassion. And then from the Mahaparinirvana Sutra, as you see the second line under doctrine, all beings have Buddha nature, integrating that. So we have agamas, renunciation, prajnaparamita, bodhicitta. Mahaparinirvana Sutra, Buddha nature. And then we have the lotus, Saddharma Pandurika and Avatamsaka. Saddharma Pandurika, the Lotus Sutra, is the notion of single thought containing all world systems, right? The 3 Chiriyakasana, 3,000 worlds. So the importance of the present thought. And the Tiantai school has already laid out that the single moment of thought embodies all realms. That means a single moment of thought, recognizing its true nature, one is awakened. Deluded, then one's in samsara. So the present moment, the present thought, becomes a key kernel in the integration of Chan. And it really pushes this idea of the present thought, present moment. From the Avatamsaka Sutra, absorbed the idea of interfusion, interpenetration. 圆融, the notion of 圆融. And that is non-obstruction with regards to each and every phenomena. One's outlook. This kind of sets the tone for the Chan position on mind, sentient beings, and Buddhas. 心佛众生. Mind, sentient beings, and Buddhas. Sets the tone. What do I mean by that? In the single moment of the present thought, present moment, the mind is identical to the Buddha. This very mind of an ordinary sentient being houses the mind of the Buddha. And all sentient beings. Interpenetration, interfusion. The Huayan tradition, the Avatamsaka tradition, talks about this in terms of the fourfold non-obstructions, if you recall. Non-obstruction with regard to phenomena, non-obstruction with regard to principle, essence, non-obstruction with regard to the phenomena and principle, and then lastly, each and every phenomenal reality. Right? You, me, us. Okay? No more talk of Buddha within, Tathagata Garbha. It's just phenomenal appearances. Just the images. In terms of the ocean seal samadhi, just the waves. Right? This may not seem like anything that can be singled out. You can't really see it in the Chan tradition on a superficial level. But if you're familiar with this teaching, and then you read the Chan discourse record, you can tell that Chan masters like Mazu, his advocacy of function only. He doesn't talk about essence anymore. Right? Just like the Huayan tradition, he doesn't really talk about essence, and then the expression, non-obstruction with regards to these two. He talks about only the function. In other words, only the ocean's waves. Right? So Chan master's behavior, right, in demonstrating awakening, demonstrating that all things are already free, that nothing can be attached to, nor is there a need to attach. Each and every phenomena in and of themselves free. So you have Chan masters kicking over the bucket, shouting, whacking students, these kind of eccentric, seems bizarre phenomena. They're actually demonstrating the non-obstruction between phenomena and phenomena. Okay. I talk about this in my book, Passing Through the Gateless Barrier. That is my comment on the Gongans. If you can read carefully, I don't really explain them doctrinally. Those were transcripts from talks that I gave on the koans. But the Chan tradition at least some masters, some Chan masters, teach from that position of non-obstruction with regard to each and every phenomena. Some other Chan masters, they teach from the non-obstruction between principle and phenomena. Right? So, renunciation, bodhicitta, Buddha nature, Mahaparinirvana Sutra, and then Tiantai and Huayan, and it all leads to, this is something unique. It leads to, on the right, Vimalakirti Sutra, which was the assigned reading tonight. There are some key passages in the Vimalakirti Sutra. Vimalakirti Sutra is a very unique scripture. It's firmly established in the Prajnaparamita literature, but also incorporates the teaching of, even though it doesn't say this explicitly, the teaching of Buddha nature. It uses other terms like true reality and so on. But all of the teachings are, and also includes Huayan teaching of interpenetration, interfusion. And tonight we'll look over some of them, some of the passages. And all of these are placed together in a very lively narrative, a very fun way of Vimalakirti interacting with people. We'll go over that. Now this passage, culminating the Vimalakirti Sutra, Chan, integrate all the previous teachings, but all of them consummate in the Vimalakirti Sutra. So the Vimalakirti Sutra is one of the most important texts for the Chan school. Now you can say, historically, the Lankavatara Sutra, the text that Bodhidharma brought with him, that teach the Chinese Buddhists, that's very important. Yeah, it was important, but its prominence diminished greatly when it came to the sixth ancestral master, patriarch, Huineng. He was awakened by the Diamond Sutra. So there was a shift from Lankavatara Sutra, which we'll see later. It's an amalgamation between Yogacara and Tathagata. It was a transitional sutra. So you had mixed teachings from both. So you could say, from Bodhidharma to the fifth patriarch, what was important was Lankavatara Sutra. But from the sixth patriarch, Huineng, onward, was the Diamond Sutra. Now, where is Vimalakirti Sutra placed? Vimalakirti Sutra demonstrated to the Chinese how Chan masters can behave. That's where they got the ideas from. The very lively, down-to-earth embodiment of Prajnaparamita, right? Of the wisdom teachings, in a sarcastic, dynamic, lively way. Right? So the Chan masters yelling, hitting, and saying bizarre things. Where is that from? Vimalakirti. He's like that, right? And with regard to the idea of the interfusion, he's hanging out in brothels, he's kind of wealthy, rich, and he's, at one time, one of the Buddha's key disciples, Purna, meditating. And the demon came to him. The demon disguised himself as Indra, right? Kind of Hindu deity. Actually, is one of the gods from the Vedic text. Along with 12 of his demoness, all sensual, presents himself as Indra, benevolent god, right? And then this monk didn't recognize her. Oh, Indra, oh, welcome. Vimalakirti says, you idiot. That is the demon. Those 12 women are the demoness. Because Indra say, why don't I offer these 12 beautiful servants to make offerings to you? They can live with you and they can support you. If you need drinks, they can get you drinks and so on. And then he said, I'm not allowed to do that. And then Vimalakirti comes and says, you idiot, that's Indra. They want to destroy your meditation practice. And Vimalakirti says, those 12 demoness, give them to me. And the demon was like, what? No, I don't want to. I said, no. I love women. Give them to me. And then he was scared. And he was trying to run away, make himself invincible. Couldn't hide by the wisdom of Vimalakirti. And somewhere in the sky says, demon, just give those 12 maidens to Vimalakirti, and then you can escape. And he's like, okay, here you are. And Vimalakirti takes them, teach them the Mahayana. Each and every one of them give rise to bodhicitta. And then the demon sometimes comes back. Right? So, want them back. The demon is like, I don't want to go with you. I want to hang out with Vimalakirti. Right? So Vimalakirti is like, don't worry. You have already generated the bodhicitta. Realize your self-nature. Go hang out with your boss, your old ex-boss. And the boss is like, I don't know if I want them back. It's like, no. Take him back. So very lively exchanges. That reminds me of Chan masters. There was a Chan master. Someone accused him of fathering a baby. This beautiful young woman in town. Actually, it's by this other young man. They don't want to admit it to the parents because they're not married yet. And then the Chan master was like, my baby? Oh, okay. Come. And then takes the baby despite all the criticism. Now he had to go alms begging for milk. Right? Meanwhile, people are throwing rocks at him, spitting at him. Why? Break the precept. What kind of monk is that? Fathering a baby. And how dare he hanging out the baby to come alms begging? And the mother couldn't stand it anymore. Confessed to her father. Said, it's actually Johnny over there. He's the father. Said, can we have the baby back? We miss him so much. Chan master was like, oh, it's not mine? Okay. Here you go. Able to engage with the world, Roman play in samadhi, interacting with sentient beings. These ideas come from Vimalakirti. So that's why it culminates there. So that's the doctrine. So what texts were important? The Agamas, early teachings, Prajnaparamita, and then Buddha nature. All of you read the Mahaparinibbana. And then the Tiantai lotus, Huayan Avatamsaka, culminates to Vimalakirti. So these early teachings, they're all there in the Vimalakirti Sutra. But the Vimalakirti Sutra gave a twist, reinterpretation to all the previous teachings in the Agamas, in the Prajnaparamita, in the Lotus Sutra, in the Avatamsaka. So, Vimalakirti. Very important. So that's the doctrinal foundation of Chan. Now, in terms of the principle, here we're talking about the working and the practice. What is the principle? Precept. meditation and wisdom. But precept is no ordinary precept. Precept here is, sure, the Patimoksha of the Shravakas. Patimoksha are independent liberation precepts. Right? That's the full ordination precept. Yes. But also the cumulative pure precepts of the Bodhisattva, of which there are 3. So we transmit the 3 cumulative, when we transmit the Bodhisattva precepts, we transmit the 3 cumulative pure precepts, end all harmful actions, cultivate all good, all, right? And deliver all sentient beings. 3 cumulative pure precepts. From then, we have the 10 virtues. We can have all the other finer individual Bodhisattva precepts. There are many traditions of Bodhisattva precept. The 3 cumulative pure precepts actually comes from the Yogacara Bhumi Sastra. Yogacara Bhumi Sastra by Asanga. So, detailed articulation of that. We didn't get a chance to read that because that's like a compendium. Right? But, and also it's not translated. Some chapters are translated, but not the whole commentary. But my teacher has written a book on it in Chinese. It's being translated, so it will come out. When they come out, all of you can read about that. Not a translation of the Yogacara Bhumi Sastra, but a whole book on precepts. Right? He has a separate book, separate volume on Bodhisattva precepts too. So that's been translated too. So precepts, from the Chan perspective, includes the foundational and the developed Mahayana precepts. Both those two. But how they are actually practiced, Platform Sutra. Platform Sutra. Right? The different important passages here. Right? Mind without right and wrong, good and bad, jealousy, greed, aversion, and harm. That's precept. So if you would share the Platform Sutra, page 46. Okay. No, number 6, repentance. Repentance in the chapter on 6th chapter on repentance. That's where you get the idea, right? And I've highlighted for you. So if you see under precepts, you have the first column on the chart. You have individual liberation precepts, the Pratimoksha, cumulative pure precepts. Under meditation, you have sequential Chan, sudden Chan. Under wisdom, you have hearing, reflecting, practicing, unobstructed wisdom, all of these things. And then on the right column, you have first thing is Platform Sutra, right? So the Platform Sutras in this chapter on formless repentance is where on this chart the passages are pulled, right? The Platform Sutra. So what is first, right? You see that in the formless repentance, by observing the precepts. Right? First, the incense of precepts, which is to have no error. This is a different translation, but different rendering, but the same Chinese characters as I have in the chart. Okay, this translation is by John McRae, which is what I recommend. A translation for the Platform Sutra Have no error, no evil, no jealousy, no greed and anger, no injury within one's own mind. This is the essence of precept. So it's a kind of reinterpretation of precepts. What is meditation? What is meditation? Right? Can you switch back to the chart? Like, if you jump back to the chart. Alright? You have a cursor? You have a cursor? Go to over here. Huinan. Under meditation, you have sequential Chan, you have sudden enlightenment Chan. Under that, there are three items. Right? Sequential contemplation, right? Prior to Huinan, basically Tiantai. Right? Even Huinan's own disciples, Yongjia Xuanjue, which I gave a whole commentary on, Song of Awakening. It's on YouTube now, right? Selections from that. He was a Tiantai master. Right? He was also called the one-night stand awakening. Right? Awakened master, Yongjia. So this is referring to him. Right? His own disciple entered Chan through Tiantai. Third one, that passage, undisturbed mind is itself samadhi. Where is that from? Now flip to the Platform Sutra. Right. Second, the incense of meditation. So this incense just means they're lighting incense. So basically he's talking about the three higher learnings of precept, meditation, wisdom. Right. What is meditation? Look on the realms and the characteristics of the various types of good and evil with one's mind undisturbed. Right? So not denying, not oblivious to all the phenomenal realities, right? Good and bad, birth and death, greed and aversion, having, lacking, wanting, needing, all of these things, yet undisturbed by them. That is samadhi. So we see in the Platform Sutra, Huinan reinterpreted the traditional teaching of, precept, meditation, and wisdom. Right? Precept is not to give rise to all the vexations. That is precept. While engaging in the world. What is meditation? Recognizing all the ups and downs, topsy-turvy of the world, the good and bad, yet remain undisturbed by it. That's how Chan practitioners cultivate samadhi. Right? In the midst of the world, yet not turned by the world. Now if we flip back to the chart, you'll see wisdom. Traditional understanding of wisdom is three types. Wisdom from hearing, wisdom from reflecting, and wisdom from practicing. Right? Hearing the talk like this, reflecting on them, integrating them, and then put it to use. Right? That's a traditional, in early teaching, also in Mahayana, how wisdom is acquired. Right? Chan position. The unobstructed mind is wisdom. Unobstructed mind. What? Does that sound familiar? Unobstructed? Unobstruction? That's Huayan. Huayan teachings. Right? So under that we have, from the wisdom, from the threefold wisdom, we have, you see at this chart, it categorized the Lankadevara Sutra under the traditional Mahayana notions of wisdom. First patriarch's Lankavatara Sutra. He talks about the 5 categories and the 3 natures, right? And the 8 consciousnesses and the 2 kinds of not self. And this passage, mind as the source of the Buddha's words. Right? The Buddha mind. Right? All the sutras are the words of the Buddha. Right? Words of the Buddha's mind, awakening. This is a line directly excerpted from chapter 1 of the Lankavatara Sutra. Right? We'll talk about the 5 natures and the 5 categories and 3 natures in a bit. Second patriarch, right? Hui Ke, right? Interacting with Bodhidharma. Right? He was awakened by this line. No mind to pacify. He was very troubled. Right? He couldn't pacify his mind. Bodhidharma says, give me your mind then. You give me your mind and I'll pacify. He says, well, I can't find my mind. Well, then it's pacified. Right? This is like saying, your mind is like this hand, right? I'm grabbing this clock. Right? When I grab something, it's not free. I can't grab anything else. Right? It's bound. When we attach, when we reify, solidify things, hold on to things, we're bound by it. Whatever we cannot let go is our obstruction. So Hui Ke says, my mind is not at peace. Please pacify my mind. Give me a method. Says, well, where's your mind? Give me your mind. Well, I can't find my mind. Already pacified. Upon hearing that, greatly awakened. That's like saying, my mind is not at peace. I'm holding on to this clock. Where is the mind? Well, I can't really find the mind. The clock, right? Drop the clock. Right? Free. You're free now. The mind is not grasping, not reifying, solidifying things. It's already free. You see? When we hold on to things, we are obstructed by that thing. So clock is called light. It's light. If I try to hold on to this gong, this gong, heavy, right? It's only heavy when I hold on to it. If I don't hold on to it, I'm just looking at it. It's pretty light. You see? When we hold on to things, when we try to grasp something, we're burdened by it. So, when Hui Ke heard this, it was awakened. Right? The third part, from the sutras, the Diamond Sutra in particular, Hui Nen hears mind arising, non-abiding from the Diamond Sutra, and he became awakened. Right? What mind is arising? Bodhicitta, Bodhi mind. Give rise to Bodhi mind. Right? At the same time, not attached, not dwelling anywhere. That's like the Prajnaparamita's typical formula in all the Prajnaparamita literature. Right? A is not A, therefore is A, and then we engaging A. Right? Saving sentient being because there are no sentient beings, therefore we save sentient beings. Right? Non-abiding, yet engaging. It's like the meditation on the middle that I taught. And I gave the analogy of swimming. You're swimming, but nothing sticks. All the water flows. All the water flows. Right? Soon as the mind rests anywhere, let go, let go, let go, let go, let go, let go. Right? Yet awake, 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 awake. So, mind arising, non-abiding. Now, from the Platform Sutra's own perspective, before were all the sutras. Right? From the Huinen's teaching, how did he integrate that? He says, the unobstructed mind is wisdom. Right? And that we have the passage from the Platform Sutra, page 46. Okay, the passage reads, one's mind is to be without hindrance, but always illuminating the self-nature with wisdom and never creating the various types of evil. Vexations, you could say. And that, on the chart, is further elaborated into two things. If we are deluded to mind, if you look at your chart, if we are deluded to mind, the workings of the mind, not perceiving Buddha nature, our full potential, that's called sentient beings. If we are enlightened, awakened to mind, perceiving the wondrous freedom and expression of Buddha nature, that's called a Buddha. So the key juncture here is recognition. That's why Chan is the path of recognition. Recognizing in this very moment, are we bound by vexations or not? In this very moment, if we're free, that's in this moment, we're Buddha. If we're bound in this very moment, then we're sentient beings. And it's drawing from the passage you see in the chart, all the way on the right, identity of mind, Buddha, and sentient beings. 心佛众生平等无差别. This passage is a direct quote from fascicle 10 of the Avatamsaka Sutra. It's a set of verses. Can I share screen? No, right? It's in Chinese. Okay. Let me just do a rough translation of the verses now. 心佛及众生是三无差别. Mind, Buddha, sentient beings. The three are inseparable. 诸佛悉了知，一切从心转. This is what the Buddha knows. This is the Buddha's knowledge. And all things derived from the mind. Right? It's not incongruent to earliest teachings. Right? The Dhammapada talks about this. All things come from the mind. Right? Mind is the forerunner of all things. Right? So in the Avatamsaka Sutra, it just kind of fully elaborates that. 若能如是解，比人见真佛. If you can understand things from this way, right, then you will be able to perceive the Buddha. If you see and experience the world in this fashion, what fashion is that? Our mind and Buddha and all sentient beings, all of you, are inseparable. Don't reify it into this and that. All interconnected. And that mind is the forerunner of all things. If you can perceive this, you see Buddha. The true Buddha. "若人欲求之，三世一切佛，应当如是观，心造诸如来." So, for one who wish to know, wish to realize this, realize what? That all the Buddhas of the past, present, and future must contemplate in this fashion. That is the inseparability of all phenomenal realities. Right? Mind, our mind, sentient beings, and Buddhas. These three are mutually interfused, interpenetrating. 应当如是观，心造诸如来. Should contemplate it in this way. For all Tathagatas are created by the mind. Buddhas are created by the mind. Right? So that's the chart here. I want to go back to the chart. To focus on some things. Under wisdom, the precept meditation wisdom, under wisdom, we talked about the first patriarch, the Lankavatara Sutra. What are the 5 categories and 3 natures? This is something that we did not cover. I didn't have you guys read the Lankavatara Sutra because it's very complicated and it doesn't fit neatly. It's like a sutra by itself. It doesn't fit neatly into any of the, neither the Prajnaparamita or the Vaipuya or the Yogacara or Tathagata. It's kind of all mixed. So I didn't have you guys read it. But there are some key teachings there. That is, one set is called the 无法三自性, right? And it also introduces the 8 consciousnesses, mixing Yogacara in there. So the 5 categories, the 3 natures. What are the 5 categories? Right? 相名分别正智如如. In translation, phenomenal appearances. This is the same word that we've been encountering again and again. 相, X-I-A-N-G, 相, Lakshana. You know, and here it means nimitta. It's N-I-M-I-T-T-A. Nimitta. All right? Phenomenal appearance. Names, labels, nama, N-A-M-A. And then deluded conception, that's the 3rd. Samkalpa. And then 正智, that's correct wisdom. Samyak jnana. Jnana. N-A-N-A. Samyak. S-A-M. A-G. Samyak jhana. It doesn't matter. And then tathata, suchness. Right? What are these 5? What are these 5s? Okay? Phenomenal appearance, names or labels, deluded conception, correct wisdom, absolute wisdom, tathata, suchness. phenomenal appearances, names, and deluded conception. The first three are what bounds sentient beings. These five are merely the Lankavatara Sutra's way of organizing information. Right? So the Buddhists have many different lists. 8 of this, 5 of that, 12 of this. So this is the sentient beings in the realm of the first three. Right? They're caught up with it. Correct perception of them belongs to the last two. There's also a linear relationship. Linear. So we're born to this world with all kinds of phenomenal appearances, images, forms, shapes, people of all types, all these different things before us. And what do we do with that? We give labels to them, right? We use words and language to categorize them, to reify them. Black is not white. Well, what if you mix the two? Well, that's called gray. Everything has a name, has a label. Right? Where does that come from? Discrimination. You see, there's a linear causal relationship between them. Right? And that's what we're wrapped up with. And in order to unravel them, untangle them, it's not that we get rid of the forms, we get rid of all the appearances, you move to the mountains or isolate yourself. No. It's the discrimination, the words, labels that entangles us. Learn to free yourself from them. You see? Then we move on to the fourth one, right? Which is correct wisdom. Why is it correct? Because it's not worldly, conventional wisdom that is founded on words and language. So important, right? It's the wisdom that's beyond words and language, that sees, perceives the nature of things, and that is freedom. Right? Fred is made up of non-Fred. Right? There's not a single part of Fred that actually can be said is Fred. Not his memory, not his experiences, not his opinion, definitely not the form. Everything changes. So where's Fred? Correct wisdom. There's no Fred. Fred is made up of non-Fred. Fred is interfused with all living beings. That is Fred, mind, sentient beings, and all the Buddhas. Identical. Buddha, you can understand Buddha as, well, Buddha literally means awake. So you can understand Buddha means awake, awakened. Right? That's the true nature. That is correct wisdom. Right? Understanding that, moving even beyond that, or a step beyond that, is suchness. Suchness, absolute. Right? And that is something particular to the Lankavatara Sutra. It's a kind of amalgamation of Tathagata Garbha and Yogacara. Lankavatara Sutra came up with the ninth consciousness. Right? The ninth one, usually Yogacara talk about 8. The ninth one, what is that? Suchness. Yeah. So Tathata. So that's the 5 categories. So just a different way of organizing some of the things that we've already learned previously. So the key here is not to get rid of phenomenal appearances, not to not use names, but is the samkalpa, deluded discrimination, founded on self-referentiality. That's the culprit. That kind of ruins everything. Right? So we need to correct that, dismantle the self-referencing, the selfing, right? And recognize the interconnectedness of all things. 3 natures are from the Yogacara. All of you have my write-up for the Yogacara, the handout, very extensive, right? Just look up 3 natures there. Right? Basically, the imaginary nature, right? The other dependent nature, and then the perfected nature. 偏计所执性，依他起性，圆成实性。So, 3 natures. I have written up on that and I gave to all of you. What about the 8 consciousness? 2 types of no self. We studied that also, Yogacara. Right? 2 types of no self. Individual self and the dharma's no self. Right? The Madhyamika dealt with that. And then on the chart, mind is the source of Buddha's words. Right? So that's basically chapter 1 of Lankavatara Sutra. Chapter 1 is called 一切佛语心品. So all the words of the Buddha are mind. That's the name of the chapter. It's the, but, you know, 佛语心为宗. Right? The Buddha, how did I translate it? Mind as a source of Buddha's words. This, in the Song Dynasty, has become a slogan. This is the opening line of the Gateless Barrier in the preface, which unfortunately, I forgot to translate in my book, Passing Through the Gateless Barrier. I didn't translate the preface. I just started with case 1, right? But in the preface, in other translation, you may be able to find it. It's the opening line, right? 佛与心为宗，无能为法门. So, in translation, mind is the source of Buddha's word. The gateless gate is the Dharma gate. That's the opening line of the preface. Right? So it has become a slogan, and you see Chan Master uses all the time. So the Lankavatara Sutra does leave some traces, in the Chan tradition, but not too much. Not too much. In the later 12th century, Bodhidharma, 5th, 6th century, he brought this text. But at 12th century, these different key passages are left, but the rest of the teachings, the chant is kind of dropped, right? Too complicated. Okay, what about the 4 axioms? The 4 axioms were pieced together. Supposedly they are attributed to Bodhidharma, right? But scholars contend that they're probably pieced together sometime later, several hundred years later, gradually, as Chan developed. Yeah. Okay. I do want to go to the Platform Sutra. Let's go to the Platform Sutra. Some key passages, okay? What are the chapters that's important? I have you guys read chapter 2, 4, 5, 8. Chapter 2 is the chapter on prajna, wisdom. Which is on page 28. Right? That's very important. So if you see on page 28, first full paragraph, Huineng continued, good friends, Bodhi is the wisdom of prajna. People of this world possess it fundamentally and naturally. It is only because your mind are deluded that you are unable to become enlightened yourself. You must rely on great spiritual compatriots to show you how to see the nature. You must realize that there is fundamentally no distinction between Buddha nature of the foolish and the wise. It is only because of delusion and enlightenment that differences exist between foolish and wise. And then it goes on to describe the title of Prajnaparamita, right? The great perfection of wisdom for you. So we always recite prajna. What is prajna? What is mahaprajna? And on the bottom of that page, maha means great. Right? What does it mean to be great? It means spacious, boundlessness. Space is also without square and round, large and small. It is neither blue, yellow, red, white. It is also without above and below. And then page 29. Continue to explain about the vastness. The myriad dharmas, the myriad forms, first full paragraph, about 8 lines down in the middle. The myriad dharmas are within people's nature. Where is that from? Now, if you read this without any having been educated in the Buddhist doctrine, which it would just go right by you, right? But things like this, when he says something like this, that in your nature embodies all dharmas, that's Huayan teaching. That's also Tiantai teaching, 10 suchnesses, right? And the 10 Dharmadhatus. So it's very doctrinally grounded. You see? This is how he integrates it. And the more important thing is not to just mouth prajna, but actually embody it. Right? That's what the next section focuses on. Right? What is prajna? Prajna means wisdom. And then page 30. A single moment's stupidity and prajna is eradicated. A single moment's wisdom, prajna, is generated. You see? So that focus on the single moment, the present. 现前心, right? The present moment. And then a few lines down, I have it highlighted in yellow. Ordinary people are Buddhas, and the afflictions are Bodhi. Right? So this presents a particular outlook toward vexations in a lived, embodied way. It's not just jargon. So when we encounter difficulties in life, when we encounter vexations, that's where Bodhi is. This is where wisdom can be generated. That's how to embody it. See? Right, just some lines. Chapter 4. What is going on in chapter 4? One of the most important chapters in the Platform Sutra. Chapter 4, page 41, or 42 in the PDF page. It's a chapter on meditation and wisdom. 定慧品. Okay? Radical reinterpretation. In early teachings, precept, meditation, wisdom are sequential. Here, they are identical. If you see my highlighted text, wisdom and meditation are one of the same essence. And then next page, if there is good in both mouth and mind, and if internal and external are identical, then meditation wisdom will be equivalent. It's a bad translation. So, speaking, it should be, right? So this means congruent. What is meditation and wisdom? How do you bring it to congruence? That means what you speak and what's in your heart are identical. You're congruent. Inside, outside, one. Mouth, mind, one. Down further, second to last paragraph, you see my highlight. Samadhi of one single practice. Samadhi of the single practice. 一行三昧. That's a Tiantai teaching. Right? It's in the readings. Dan Stevenson's writing on 4 types of samadhi. He wrote about this. Right? Samadhi of a single practice. And then a few lines down, you see, the straightforward mind is the place of enlightenment. Literally, it means Bodhi Mandala, the site of the Buddha's awakening. Broadly construed, meditation centers, Zen halls, Chan halls, Dao Chang, that's the site of awakening. In Chan tradition, meditation halls are called the hall where Buddhas are chosen. There's a plaque, right? 选佛场. This is the Dao Chang. Right? Japanese call it dojo. You all heard that word, dojo. Dao Chang. That dojo originates in Buddhism. It's a Buddhist technical word. Bodhi Mandala. Right? Where is the Bodhi Mandala? The straightforward mind. That is Bodhi Mandala. Right? Where is that line from? Vimalakirti Sutra. Lifted right out of Vimalakirti Sutra. We'll go over it.